Good. How are you?
Give you something interesting.
Now.
Ready to do the slides? Press the square button, go to the slides on. Okay. Okay.
Well, good afternoon. Well, Barb mentioned there was a little bit of interest in discussion today. And I thought when I was walking up that I'd missed the annual meeting or something like that, and to see all the people here. But it's great to see. It's great to see have a naval officer and an Army officer brief the Air Force retired officers community. So because Barb had mentioned there was a lot of interest in this, I thought I would come. Mike was supposed to be here defenseless by himself. So I decided to come and be able to give you my perspective if that was of value to you. First off, I know that there's a lot of opinions and about what's going on. And first off, let me assure you that I think everybody has Falcons Landing and the community's best interest at heart. You know, nobody is trying to pull a fast one or anything like that on anybody. So please rest assured that I believe that the board, the staff and management, and the residents all want what is best for Falcons Landing. Now, one of the things that has been part and parcel of ever since I joined the board in 2007 is running a first-class community. Let me just highlight a couple of aspects from our strategic plan. Goal 1, resident life and wellness. To provide programs and services which enhance and support resident quality of life across the continuum and maintain our status as the premier retirement community in the region. Goal 3, facilities and infrastructure. To provide first-class facilities, infrastructure, and grounds to maintain high resident satisfaction and marketability. Goal 5, marketing. To enhance marketing efforts that will increase overall occupancy and develop a marketing action plan to increase Falcons Landing visibility in the marketplace as the preferred continuing care retirement community for retired military officers, senior level federal retirees, and their spouses. So let me just want to assure you that the reason for an independent board is to make sure that there is an objective view of how Falcons Landing moves into the future. That there is a long-term plan for now, for current execution, as well as what I'm most concerned about, because the place runs really well, is the viability of this community 20 years downstream. And if you look at, in 10 years, the design of the facilities and everything else, the apartments, the homes, will be nearly 40 years ago. Okay? Think about that. And for those that have, progressed in your careers and moved from homes, I think most of you recognized that there was, that there were modern things that happened, were installed, things that you liked that developed as place goes on. So the emphasis here for me is to making sure that the community is viable into the future, which means people wanting to come here, occupancy remaining high, and those kind of efforts. Now I'm going to forestall hopefully a couple of questions with just with 2 comments. One, what we're proposing, and Mike was going to get up and we've got a few slides to show, and then we're going to take your questions. But that the terrace homes that we're looking at developing in phases, that the terrace homes by themselves are basically self-funding, with the low interest rates, the entrance fees coming in, and the ongoing additional revenue of $800,000 additional revenue per year for those homes funds the ongoing variable expenses and the debt servicing that will occur. So the main thing that we've always recognized in the board is the hardest part about this is because we are landlocked, we don't have an area to expand like other facilities we visited, that the hardest part is the transition because we impact the current residents in trying to figure out how to make this work. So I do want to go ahead and leave that for the moment, and then I'll turn it over to Mike for presentation, and then we'll go ahead and we'll both be here to answer your questions. Mike?
Thanks, sir. Let's get the screen down. All right. I think we're good. So part of this is, as Admiral Timmy had explained, is that the board, within its responsibilities, is to look forward, is to look to the future and protect Falcons Landing in the future. And we use those strategic goals to guide us, to do that, to maintain or continue to be, because we are the premier facility, in the region, is to maintain that status, and not to take shortcuts and not to do unwise things today, which can impact our future. So part of this comes to having a master plan, and then, following that master plan. Now, everybody in here was wildly successful in either their public career, their military career, or in the private sector. Had success and understands the how it works, how you have to plan for the future, and if you kind of take the future as it comes, wake up every morning and just return serve on whatever comes at you, that you get mixed results. And so we're trying to make sure we don't get mixed results. And part of that comes down with having a master plan, and then part of the master plan is also having permission to execute that master plan through the appropriate regulatory agencies, in this case the county, traffic, with the traffic studies and everything else, to make sure that they say that you can do what you want to do in the future at Falcons Landing in order to keep it the premier institution. So I'll go through these slides, and then I'll explain to you kind of where we're at with the county. Next slide. So this is a rendering of a terrace home. 3 stories tall. The entrance would, it kind of depends on the contour and relief of the land that it's built upon. Each one is, as far as geography goes, depending on what it sits upon. But this is an idea of what a terrace home would look like, with the parking on the bottom floor, and then 3 floors of 4 apartments each. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what a floor would look like. 4 apartments. Notice that each apartment has a balcony, covered balcony, and 2 exposed sides. The vision is floor to ceiling windows, or very large windows, so a lot of light comes in the apartment. We'll have a closer view of each of the apartments. A common lobby for just the 4 apartments, elevator down to the parking garage, storage. So this is this is the, we are a business, a not-for-profit business, but we have competitors. We have other options, as you saw when you came here. There's other options for people that might come here in the future, our future residents. So as an offering, you want to make sure you have a diverse portfolio of what you can offer them. We've got apartments, we've got cottages. In that portfolio of offerings, this is the best thinking in the country right now, and what in that in-between piece is what they call a hybrid home, what we're going to call a terrace home. But it offers the best of what they say, both an apartment and a cottage. Next slide. Okay, so this is an example of one of the hybrid homes and what they would give us, or one of the apartments in the terrace home and what it would give us. Large square footage, 1,600 to 2,000 square feet, or a little over 2,000. So as large as the largest thing we offer now, and much bigger than many of the offerings we have in Falcons Landing right now. Very open concept. You can see with a kitchen in the middle, and a great room. 3 bedrooms. In this case, what do I got? 2 bedrooms? 2 bedrooms in this one. Walk-in closets, 9, almost 10-foot ceilings. I would say 9 foot 4 inches, or 9 foot 4 inches is kind of what we're looking at. So that's about 1.5 feet taller than anything we have here. But a very big, large, open facility. And we did our due diligence. We took representation from the residents with us. We went up to Pennsylvania. We also went down to a premier facility down in South Carolina, in Charleston, to see what these look like on the ground. Did our due diligence as a recon, see if this might be something. It's not just the latest greatest thing. If it would be something smart. And this is what we said. This is our competition in the next 10 years for Falcons Landing. So somebody in this area is going to be building these, and it'll be us as well. Next. So this is the bottom floor. This is just an idea of what the parking garage, what the parking underneath would look like. And again, there's a space. You can see common mechanical, electrical. It's the kind of stuff that's interesting to me, but nobody else. And we go and a lobby to enter, and from there. Next slide. This is just in contour relief. Parking underground, or bottom floor, and then 3 stories, just as an idea how it would work. Next slide. These are just some quick renderings of what the apartment would look like on the inside. Next slide. You can see these covered balconies. This was kind of attractive. When we went down and looked at both places, we thought this was kind of interesting. I know I do a lot of work in Louisiana. Down there, people do a lot more outdoor living than we do here, and you'd see they'd mount a TV, you know, on their outdoor patios so they can watch their beloved Saints, you know, down there in New Orleans, but have have an outdoor patio and also have floor-to-ceiling windows looking on in two main walls in the complex. Next. Okay, so look, the board is, you know, anguishes over this. We know the impact of, as Admiral Timmy said, that there's a fixed amount of real estate here. We can't really build in the wetlands. We can't expand the boundaries here. So, in order to move forward, you know, there's going to be impact. We got to figure out how to best use the space, and then you know, hope and convince the impacted folks that we're going to be, you know, we're going to be good to them and understand and empathetic to what's going on with this. And this is phase one. And I'm going to talk about the regulatory process in a second, so you understand that there's more planning out there. But why we looked at phase one as it is. Actually, this is. Or am I wrong? Is this phase one and a little bit of phase two? Okay, it's phase one. I thought I might have seen an extra. Oh, I got it now. Okay, I'm looking backwards. Okay, so the memory house, and then two hybrid homes. Thank you. Who's ever given me help? Thank you, sir. There you go. Well, you can. Yeah, so which one is it? Okay. Okay, so the memory house and the two terrace homes here. Now, obviously, there's impact, and again, we understand that. There's, no matter where we do this, where this would be, there's going to be disruption, and so we've got to look at how that works. The reason we decided to, and this is only within the last month or two, that we're thinking that this would be the first phase, is because we could do this from a constructability standpoint in one side of the campus and not impact the balance of the campus with disruption as far as the work goes, as the work progresses over a year and a half to 2 years it'll take to put these in. Also, you know, it's not one of these things where you go all in and try to do everything at once. You take, you know, steps and see how the market plans out and kind of see what's smart to go forward. And I'm sure we'll have questions about this later. I want to talk to you about the regulatory process for a second, and why it works the way it does. In order to change Falcons Landing, in order to add units in Falcons Landing, we need to seek permission from the county. You need to go through zoning and get permission, and that's a long process. And to a certain extent, there's a cost to it. It costs in time and it costs in money. You know, you gotta hire engineers and lawyers and people to study in order to put together the documents to present to the county and go through their process, and their very public process of approval. Everybody, as I said earlier, everybody here has probably a pretty robust background both in public service and in the private sector, or in the private sector. And you would understand what I always look at, and I think through my engineering business, is option theory. You know, option theory says that, you know, in order to do something in the future, you probably have to pay a premium today. And if you don't pay that premium, you can't call that option 1, 2, 3 years from now. You won't have the flexibility or the ability to do it. So this whole planning process we're going through and going to the county is going to them pretty much in a favorable, you know, right now we have a great relationship. This, because of your good works and because of the first-class facility that Falcons Landing is, we have a tremendous reputation and relationship with the county. So, you know, we have favorable kind of regulatory conditions in order to get approval to do things in the future if we go today. You never know what that's going to be like 2 years from now, 3 years from now. But today it's favorable. And so the concept is to go into the regulatory bodies and ask for permission to build Falcons Landing to what it might look like in 25, 35, 40 years. You know, what just so you get permission, so you don't have to go back and ask. Because where we don't want to be, where we fail you as a board, I think, is if we don't protect the future of Falcons Landing by going out and securing this permission, so that we wake up in 4 or 5 years, find out some of our competitors have flopped up something that we just were too timid to do, and the next thing you know, we have issues with, we can't just turn on a dime and just go hire an architect and start building it, because we got to go get permission to do all that stuff. So you're talking about from asking the regulators to turnkey, somebody walking in an apartment, you're talking about a 4 to 5 year flash to bang. And that's if there's a favorable climate in the regulatory business for you to do this and to get permission. So the board's feeling and the board's sense and the board's direction was, let's go in now, as Admiral Timmy said, always looking for the future vitality of Falcons Landing and keeping us the premier operation for continuum of care, in this part of the country. Let's go in now and get that permission. And then we have the discretion at the pace that we want to go ahead and proceed with growth. It's on us then. Once we secure permission, we could do all this stuff in 40 years. We can do all this stuff. It's on us because we've secured permission from the county. So that's how that piece right now in our timetable, because we've already submitted documents to the county. The public process on their part will probably be done by October. The formal process sometime after that, but if we want to proceed with some of this, say for example designing the memory care, the memory house, we could probably begin design within October, November. So that's a big macro. There's obviously a lot of detail that goes with any of this, and I'm sure we might hit on some of those even when we get in the question and answer period. Sir, you have anything to add here? All right, so we're gonna, Fred and Barney it up here and take your questions. So.
Just want to make sure there's no handguns that are all checked.
Sorry, this is not my first public meeting. I gotta say. All right, so let's. What's that, sir? All right, so let's start this way, so we have some kind of, and we'll work way. So, front row.
Yeah, front row.
There you go.
Hello? I'm going to ask my question really quickly. That's why I wrote it out, because I know there's a lot of questions. My first question, what is our goal? When we destroy an Alexandrian, a duplex that is home to perhaps 4 residents, and replace it with a low-rise apartment house that houses perhaps 36 residents, we are greatly increasing our population. So is that our goal? Every report we get from or about Hardy's finances of Falcons is laudatory. Now, do we need more income? Or perhaps because of greater competition, are we building these structures to attract new, younger residents who are asking for more space and amenities? If the case is that we have to grow our population to stay financially stable, possibly these structures are what we need. But if it is to continue to attract residents within this competitive market, keeping our population as it has been for the last 20 years, bring on an architect that is anxious to upgrade and remodel our cottages. Add skylights, add newer, larger windows, fireplaces, bump outs to make larger and updated bathrooms, and even walk-in closets. How about adding a sunroom? And even find a couple of Alexandrians that might have enough property on one side to add an extra 2-car garage. Consider knocking down 2 Alexandrians and build an updated Monticello house.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I've got the question.
Okay, and I want a go-getting, think outside the box architect who can do something. By the way, what's going to happen to the Woodburn Cafe? It's 5:15, 6 o'clock. Will we get into it?
Okay, part of
The newer population.
Okay, the latter part of your first part of your question is correct. We are trying to build to be competitive for the future population, so that in 20 years' time, the key is occupancy. Right now, we have a 93% occupancy. As time goes on, as our facilities are static, as we do minimal improvements, people come in and look at small footprint type of places, we're going to be challenged to maintain the occupancy, which is vital to keep going forward. Our task is to maintain our operating ratio, which is basically the ongoing expenses covering, or revenue covering the expenses. We need that occupancy to be able to do that. Doing modifications or skylights, that's not a step change in attractiveness to somebody coming in. For the general populace, that the studies today say that people are looking for larger units, lots of windows, lots of light. Those kind of things are going to be attractive, and it's what we're going to be competing against. Already, out in Ashley Pond, if you want, Vincent Hall just did a $90 million investment in renovations in developing new facilities, brand new apartments, brand new larger ones to attract people. That's what we're competing against. If we just try to put Band-Aids on current facilities, make slight, relatively insignificant changes, is not going to be what we're going to be competing against in the future. Mike?
No, I'm glad you didn't have longer to prepare that question here. Like, that was a good one. So our point is, and my thinking about this is, I don't know how much more out-of-a-box architecture you can get than that thing. I mean, you go with Reno architecture. I love watching HGTV, but you're still going to be stuck with an 8-foot ceiling. Unless you talk about disruption, I'm looking from the engineering standpoint, major reno of what we've got is a disruption as well. You can't occupy it as you go. So the question you're coming is into density. Why more? Why more folks? I think, from my perspective, this is the best and most economical use of funding for for the disruption that we've got. And then you go in for the zoning, and you've got the flexibility in the future. I don't think. I think we considered obviously all those things. As you consider walking through this, and basic thing is don't change, shine it up. We didn't think that was the right kind of solution. I mean, at least I can't speak for the whole board. I'm one of the members. I can give you my shot on it. Sir. Okay, sure. Yes, sir.
Falcons Landing is a not-for-profit facility sustained by the residents. Now, this is a big and a very attractive project that you have. But I think the residents really need the assurance that this modernization is to keep up with on top of the market is the right direction to go. That's why they're all here. Is this the right thing to do? So along those lines, I got a lot of questions, but I put down 3 for a starter. There's the talk of the competition with the marketplace out there. So I say, what precisely is the evidence that our unique community, we are unique, should be jumped, lumped, and measured against the more general competition of retirement residents? Question number 1. Question number 2. What were the specific modernization alternatives considered in coming up with this plan? And from what you have said, there doesn't appear to have been one, not an alternative plan. And number 3, how was our resident culture, this unique family culture that we have here, factored into your planning? And we'd like you to enumerate how that was addressed by the board.
One?
But why don't you take the first part about
the competition. I was focusing on the second question here. So the first question, sir, again, was just give me the highlights on the first question here again.
What was the evidence,
Oh,
the
okay.
evidence that we should be measured against the general retirement community spectrum, as opposed to this rather peculiar one that we have here?
Yeah, well, the evidence is, I think, the day in and day out efforts by our marketing staff, the visits they get, the feedback they get, Leah and her team get from potential candidates that come in and quite honestly decide against Falcons Landing, even though they come, you know, with our culture. Now, I've
I
got
understand that, but I say, what's the evidence? The fact that marketing says this or marketing says that, if we're going to do something as big as this, we want the specifics. Was there an outside organization that measured this sort of thing? What is the evidence that people are being turned away or that we're losing market strength because we are not as modern as perhaps we should be? I mean, what's the evidence of that?
Let me give you two aspects. Is one, our direct competition, the closest one we have in the area, just invested $90 million in brand-new facilities to attract the people we want to attract. $90 million, a whole slew of new buildings for them to look at. And number two, about 2 years ago, we changed our bylaws to go from retired officers to successfully served officers because we needed to increase our market pool of people that we could apply to. Those are two direct aspects and direct considerations that show we need to make sure that we're competitive, we're attractive, and we just can't assume that that's a given for us.
Well, that's not evidence, those are assumptions.
It is clear that we really need that we need to make ourselves attractive in the future, and we've got competition. If we don't, we're going to lose.
So, well, there were two more questions I can go to quick. So alternatives, the second, so I've been, I was an old Corps guy, I've done multiple public meetings, and I've watched know how this works. I know that you can study something to death, right, and lose the option to do something, and you could. I'm not dismissing the question because it's important. What we're engaged right now is in asking for permission for the future. I mean, we're in the middle of the regulatory process, right? That's where we're at. Now, we can defer this 4, 5, 6 years and study this, and then we can go into the regulatory process and perhaps not happen. I'm looking at setting the conditions for the option to do things in the future. As far as alternatives, the master plan back in 2007, as far back as 2007, envisioned an apartment complex, and otherwise more of the same. You know, it was an answer to the question of density, right? It answered the question of density. It said, let's just build another apartment house. And that was part of the master plan in 2007, which had been briefed to people, and which was part of this. Hybrid homes we thought were a better solution for both our competitiveness and for a more attractive campus and facility than building another, apartment house. And I'm trying to remember the third question again here.
Well, no, before you get to the third questions, did you put together a team that was in competition with this particular plan to look at it, red teaming it in a sense, to say, okay, here's an alternate in competition with this particular plan? Did you do something like that to come up with an alternative?
To hire two architects and compete them against each other? No, we didn't.
One a modernization, with in-place modernization to compete with this new construction?
No. We hired one architect. We asked him to, what are our options? And as a matter of fact, just going through and just updating or just making minor modifications he didn't recommend it because that's not something that makes it a difference and viable, good portion improvement to the master plan.
Well, I get out the question. I can probably get an architect that would say, okay, he's not going to make minor modifications, we'll make major modification in competition with this plan. And see, I'm just looking from the standpoint of the residents. Are we going to go in the right direction? Or are there other directions that we could be going in? And that's what we're asking you to respond to.
There's other we could be, and we're going in the right direction.
We believe, after the extensive master planning processes that we've been involved in for 8 years, that we believe we're going in the right direction.
Okay, you already have my third question. I'm not going to say another word other than take into account the unique characteristic of this body. What's the impact on your proposal to our kind of cultural lifestyle?
I think that this is an improvement. Wouldn't you call the improvement? We just spent $5 million on a change to the facilities and infrastructure with the Compass Room, with the casual dining, with the 4 times size improvement in the athletic facilities. To me, those are amenities. The culture, the bonds, that's the people in this room. You know, if you have some construction, you get through it. I mean, you guys did marvelously in getting through the construction that had and it was pretty invasive, impacted you from dining to your workout facilities to the pool, stuff like that. I didn't see it affected culture at all. I think, in fact, I was just appreciative that the people that we have here are, you know, if you pardon the expression, troopers about getting through stuff like that because of what you've done in your lives. So that was, to me, that was changing culture doesn't even enter the argument to me.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see, yes, sir, I got it. We're going to pick you next, okay? Just give me 1 second. From my point of view, I've never defined the culture and the ethos and the bonds of Falcons Landing by the number of apartments and cottages we had. I don't. I define it by the atmosphere and the camaraderie and the history of the folks that are the residents. So I don't draw a parallel to having a hybrid home or having a terrace home vice having a cottage is changing the culture or the ethos of Falcons Landing. I mean, if they were here when you came, I think you'd have the same, you know, you'd have the same or better culture and ethos that we have now, just a better living environment. I mean, this is better and smarter as far as a structure. Now, do we want, we can have a position about the disruption or where or the what, but what is to be built is better than what is here as far as, you know, a facility. You know, that's, we would be wasting our money to do that, to not do that. Sir, here.
I want to pick up a little bit on what Mick talked about in this common bond thing. The thing that has concerned me the most over the last few months is the way this has been rolled out. You submitted the variances to the county in February. They were accepted in March. In accordance with the county regulations, letters were mailed out to between 3,000 and 4,000 abutters in compliance with the rules by early April. You hold an AFROC meeting at the end of April, and you talk in very generic terms about strategic planning and a master plan, and you didn't tell us any of this stuff. And then a month later, when Barbara has her meeting, frankly, she's taken aback by the reaction of the residents and wasn't fully prepared to answer all their questions. Perhaps that all could have been rolled out completely differently, starting with the family and telling us what was going to go on. That was concern number one. Concern number two, with no disrespect to Leah and her team, the best marketeers you have are the people in this room. And when we see two couples allowed to move into duplexes that are on the list to be potentially destroyed, and they're not told that, that's unacceptable. Whether that happened by accident, whether that was a decision somebody made, and I have had friends that I've worked with at the Pentagon, I've had them out here, I've showed them what a wonderful place this is. It's one of the best decisions my wife and I have ever made. And by the way, I'm the second youngest male resident here. I am a baby boomer. That's why I picked a duplex, so I'd have a yard and a patio, which I would choose over a balcony. But that aside, if those people were people I recommended to come here and they were treated that way, I wouldn't be recommending anyone else to come. And then when you add to that, over the last few months we've seen, you have a lot of really talented people here. And when they go to management with suggestions about how things should be approved here, and they're cavalierly dismissed without their ideas being considered, that sends another message that really doesn't fit with, one, we're a happy family, military board, military management, military. So those things concern me. Hopefully that's not a trend, because I think those things have really disturbed a lot of people here in the last few months.
Thanks for your comments, appreciate that. You know, I will say that I regret how the process has rolled out. Okay? And the reason for that is we were trying to figure out what comes, you know, it's a long process. And it takes a lot of assessment, planning, and looking at the drivers for anything from easements to what site locations or whatever. What we were trying not to do was create undue alarm by, I'm serious. Like I said, I regret how the process rolled out. What we were trying to do was figure out what we were specifically going to do, be able to answer questions early on before, you know, when we had some information and we could be very specific. There is nothing more frustrating than to ask a question and then to have somebody like me say, that's a great question. I'll get back to you when we've got it figured out. We would have done that in a number of areas. You know, who's being affected? When's this going to happen? You know, what's the approval process? Who's doing what? What are people going to get? All those questions we wanted to have answers for, and not just stiff arm you and say, come back later, we'll talk about it when we've got it figured out. That is extremely frustrating. So what we're trying to do is get some semblance of an idea about the sequence and the details, and then being able to discuss it with facts in hand. What's the impact? What are we going to do? What are the policies that we have? There's a whole slew of things that we were trying to be ready for to answer. And I regret that the way the information flowed didn't work out to your satisfaction, or to the boards either, I'll tell you. But what we were trying to do, because it's such a long process, and who knows, maybe it won't be approved by the county and we won't do anything. That may be the case. So the issue is, you know, what's the order in which we tell people, get them concerned, discuss things, be able to answer questions, is not an easy one with a long process. So that was the main point why the board was not necessarily, you know, on day one, you know, at what time, hey, let's go tell everybody that we're considering, you know, a number of locations, doing all these, you know, doing various things at the campus, and then not being able to answer any questions. That was the problem. So, you know, whether it didn't work out to your satisfaction, I recognize that. But what I'd ask you to do is consider that it was not the board's intent to hide anything. It was be able to answer questions with information when you had them. You want to have any comments?
Yeah, I've got a few. Well, I got a lot. But I'm going to call next up, right? So, I guess the presumption is that we were all knowing months and months ago on how this was on this precise plan, which the truth is we weren't. So the board, as Admiral Timmy said, the board looked and said, "Do we just tell everybody that everything's up for grabs?" Yep. Guess what? So we could, you know, create consternation for all, or do we get our facts in line and start lining things up as things come through, see what's possible and probable with the county? As Admiral Timmy said, we regret unbelievably the fact that the truth be known is the letters going out in the public process from the county caught us by surprise. We weren't told if that was going to happen in advance, and we didn't know, or else we would have. So I understand there's a lot of opinions going on. That's why there's a lot of mumbling here. So the next piece is the next piece to you is that I'm that next 2 generations. AFROC member, 56 years old. What's gonna be, in 10 to 20 years, what's going to be attractive to me? The fact of the matter is that that you can have, the way we're trying to do this is there's a diverse portfolio where somebody like you could have a yard because you wanted a college, but somebody else that didn't want to have a yard but wanted, something better than an apartment we have to offer has an offering. That's why this piece fits in that portfolio of offerings between cottage and 40-year-old apartment. A new offering for the next generation of folks, and that was the piece in that logic there. So you can have what you want, but somebody else may have what they want. And the truth of the matter is, there was no absolute or even leaning to knowledge of knowing which apartments were going to go first. The phasing of this thing actually, we had come to conclusion, asked the board for permission on the phasing of just within the last month. I mean, what was going to get done first, other than the memory house, was unknown. So as a violation of trust with bringing somebody in, I don't know if I can underwrite that assertion. I mean, I don't think it was there. I was leading. I was part of those meetings. So, now, sir, you're up. I got it.
Thank you. Tiffany, is this working? Thanks. First of all, excuse me, I want to change the tone a little bit. And I want to tell you, we love Falcons Landing. My wife loves Falcons Landing. And I think most people here love Falcons Landing. And we think that... But I also want to talk about 2 anniversaries. We moved into our new, beautiful Monticello home exactly 1 year ago last week. The other anniversary I want to tell you about, this very day, today, my mother turns 103. And I believe, honestly believe, because where she lives, she's 103 and may live forever. She lives in a continuing care community in Ponte Vedra, Florida. She's been living there for 10 years maybe. And she is healthy. Her mind is sharp. She wrote a book a couple of years ago. And I understand what a CCRC can do. And I expect it to do. I'm not yet close to that. But I also have researched what do these people in their 60s really want. And I've heard that you've done some research. I accept that. But what about people that are moving in here? What do they want? Well, I've done some research. And I'd like to introduce you to my research assistant, my wife, Nancy. Let me tell you about Nancy. When I went, this is 3 years ago, Nancy, and we're sitting down in a restaurant in Leesburg, and I'd come out and looked around. I heard about Falcons Landing. I used to play golf down here. I never turned right on Algonquin Parkway. This day I did. I pulled in, everybody's heard this story, I think. Pulled up to the gate, and I saw this beautiful piece of land and houses on the hill. And I went, and it was a Saturday or Sunday, and the guard said, well, unfortunately, the marketing office is closed today. Would you come back on Monday? I said, well, yeah. And then he hands me a brochure, and it even looks better. And I said, would you mind if I just drove around, came right back? I promise I'll give you my driver. And he said, Mr. Haynes, come right in. That man was Ted Williams. He should be the chief head of the marketing department. So I was stunned by this. So Nancy and I having dinner one night, and I said, let me tell you about what I think maybe we should be thinking about. Well, I think she thought I'd lost my mind. And she said, we're not ready for that. I'm much too young for that. And I said, well, you are, but I'm not. Not in so many words. But I think let's think about this. And brought Nancy out, went through it. and we even looked at a couple places, and for 3 years, almost 3 years, we narrowed it down to exactly the kind of house that my millennial, Generation X, where are you? A lot younger than I am, really was going to be happy in. And then when we finally found out that our number had come up and we had a house that we liked, and believe me, we had looked at every single cottage on the property. We'd been to dinner out there, we'd met a lot of people in this intervening couple of years. So then we were given the opportunity to renovate this house the way we wanted it. And Nancy and I look, every day we look at this, we've lived there a year now, what would we do differently? There's nothing there is absolutely nothing we would change. And so I would invite you and any other member of the board and anybody here in this room, and many of you have seen our house, come visit. Because I think that could be a model home, because there's no reason what we did couldn't be done to any other house. I won't detail the things that we did. We did a lot of it with our own money. And it wasn't that much money. It's certainly a lot less money than building one unit of a hybrid home. So what I'm concerned about is we want to stay where we are. Barbara's told us, well, we'll make it possible, we'll make it easy for you. I said, Barbara, the only thing that would make it easy for us is clone what we have. And she said, well, it probably can happen. I went back and told Nancy that, and she said, oh, well, and then she began to think about it. How are they going to possibly clone the view that we have? The sun hits the house at the right way, and 1,000 other things. And so Nancy tells me every day, she says she cries. She's been crying for 2 weeks. I don't want to leave our new home. We moved here thinking this was going to be our last home. They were going to take us out of this home when we weren't physically able to live there or in a pine box. We honestly believe that. And by the way, the contract says we have the right to live there until we can't live there. I understand there's probably a way out of that, but we want to stay where we are. And I think that I can speak for other people here, not in just the manor homes or Monticellos as they now call them, but in the duplexes. They love their duplex. And so what I'm hoping that, I really don't have a question, I'm asking the board to step back, think about this, take in consideration what you've heard or will hear today and what you will hear in the future. Come visit us. I don't think a single board member's ever been in our house that I know of. You're all welcome. So come see what we've done and reconsider this. I understand the zoning process in spades. I used to be involved in airport, and if you think that's a problem, I understand how that's done. When I was, somebody early on showed me that letter that went to the Cascades community. I knew exactly what it was all about. So I don't have any criticism about that. Thank you for listening to me.
Great. Thanks for your comments. Appreciate it. You know, certainly right now, the 2,000 square foot single homes that we have are not a challenge to go ahead and get people to move into, to put on the market and sell and that kind of thing. It is much more of a challenge with a 1,450 square foot duplex. And I think, and the market surveys say that with the increasing time, the demand for more square footage, that's going to get harder and harder and harder. Especially, like I said, you always got to keep in mind in the viewpoint, in the context of we're in competition for people who can go elsewhere. And what we're looking at is things that are much larger, 1,600 to 2,100 square foot, larger, and and will be more attractive and keep us more competitive. Now, we recognize if we had spare land and could, had a clean sheet of paper where we could not impact the residents, we would do so, and this meeting probably wouldn't be really happening. you know, and the reason I'm here is because I recognize this is so significant and impactful on the residents. It is, if we could do it another way, we would. What we want to commit to you is that we're going to try to make it as painless as possible. And to be able to where you haven't lost out on what you've invested in the property. Admittedly, I can't do much about views, but as far as comparable, what money you may have invested, the board, and helping you move. The board is committed to doing that and making things right for people. What we're really trying to do is ask for your assistance in trying to make this community competitive and capable of going into the future, not the next 2 years where somebody that's on Leah's current marketing list or William's marketing list. And we really need to look for doing that. We realize this is stressful. We realize this is impactful. And we wouldn't be doing it if the board truly didn't believe that this was the right thing for the community in going forward. I mean, certainly I'm not invested in a construction firm that's going to be making a buck off this, okay? This is purely our look at trying to be objective. And as you know, the bylaws call for the board to be independent, completely independent. So we look at that. In fact, if you're on a board and you enter, become a resident, the bylaws specify that you can no longer be on the board. And that is so you have an objective opinion, because it is so hard when you're so closely tied to a community, the people. How can I objectively do something that's going to impact my good friend? I mean, you want an independent board that is looking at things objectively, that really wants to look out for the long-term health, prosperity, and of the community. I really do. And I wouldn't be on the board if the board was expedient or just looking to do things. I want to do things right by the residents that are here. And I can't tell you how sorry I am that this is how it's both been rolled out, as well as your personal impact. But it's really, the board wants to commit to trying to do as best we can for the community and what we can individually for the individual. I really do. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, just hold it close.